Hey, everybody. If you want the full uncensored episode, be sure to click the link below to join the Fight Club on Patreon. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. I've been really anticipating this moment, to be honest with you, because it's funny. I remember my first game I played against you.
Nova Scotia?
Yep. And you were in New Brunswick with the Hawks.
Yep.
And you ripped it up that game. And it's just funny. When I look at your career, your hockey career as a whole, I could never believe how you never stuck with the Maple Leafs. But we'll get into this. We'll get into this for sure.
That'll be a suspension. That'll be a fine. Nyland going ballistic. He's a freaking madman.
I'm Chris Nyland, and this is the Raw Knuckles Podcast. But anyway, welcome to the Raw Knuckles Podcast. I really appreciate you joining me today, Gabby. And, 50 years in this game, over 50 years in the game of hockey, coaching, playing, hockey schools. You wrote your book, Gabby, Confessions of a Hockey Lifer. What is it about this game of hockey that you love so much?
Well, I think for all guys that stay in the game, it gets in your blood at an early age. And especially when you're growing up in the 60s, there's not a lot of TV. There's no internet, no anything. So, I mean, all it was in the winter, and winters were a lot colder back then, all of these things. So, I mean, at 3 years old, your dad's building a rink in the back. The biggest thing in news that people are talking about is hockey. And it just gets in your blood. And once it got there, I mean, it was the only thing I ever wanted to do, the only thing I ever wanted to be part of. I remember as far back as when I was 6 years old, my dad asking me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "A hockey player." And I never wavered from that. And it was like, okay, I've said it, so I have to be it. And that was the way it was. And so I started following all the statistics. They used to call me the stat nut in the dressing room, because I knew I would read up on all of the other teams and their numbers and everything. So it was just hockey, and to the point where, it said, well, what happens when hockey's done? And I thought the only thing you could do then is coach or be part of it. I mean, I never thought of anything else. I never wanted another career, never dreamt of being a doctor or a lawyer or anything else. It was just hockey for me.
Yeah, it's funny. I certainly have the same sentiment when it comes to the game. As a kid growing up, that's what I wanted to do. I was asked as a young kid. But growing up in Boston, I wasn't we didn't have the ability to go out in the winter and really skate on a frozen rink in the backyard. One, I grew up in the inner city, but there just was never cold enough like it is up here. In like you said, you had a rink growing up. Do you spend it, in your yard? Did you just spend all your time out there? You must have, right?
All the time. I'd come in for lunch, come in for supper, and then you go right back out there. And it was I never played with trucks or anything in the house or anything. So, I mean, in the summer, it was the same thing with baseball. As soon as hockey was done, it was baseball. You go to the park, you play baseball all day long. So it was a different time. But I mean, I really liked I've said it many times, I think it was very fortunate that we grew up in the times that we did grow up in.
Calling all hockey lovers. Upgrade your podcast experience by becoming an enforcer. Gain access to the greatest hockey doc ever, The Last Gladiators. And don't settle for ordinary. Join the Fight Club over on Patreon today. I look at you being drafted there in that third round and by the Leafs. I got a letter from the Montreal Canadiens 2 weeks later saying you've been invited to training camp, and I see today, it's incredible today, kids go to the draft, their parents are there, their families are there. What was that like for you getting drafted by the Leafs? Like how happy were you?
Well, it's an interesting story, quite frankly. I wasn't very happy at all myself being in the
Wow.
third round. Like
Yeah.
you have to understand, there's a backstory, and it's all my fault. But anyway, uh, we won the Memorial Cup that year. I broke all the Canadian records in scoring that year, Canadian junior records. And so, you know how nowadays they have the interviews and everything else. Well, I didn't interview, but I was talking. I had dinner with the Oakland Seals management team maybe 2 weeks before the draft, and they said, we're picking you third. We've got third pick. We're going to pick you. Not third round, third pick. And I said, well, that's really great. Really happy. Then the Marlies had the championship party, and the late John McClellan, who was the assistant GM, says, hey, Bruce, we're going to take you seventh, but we don't think you're going to be there by the time we draft. So you've got these visions of sugar plums dancing in your head that you're going to go this high. Then I think the Monday came, and we had a team party, and we all had in a bar in Toronto. And back then, everybody all year on our team, anytime we went out, somebody was streaking. Okay. So, 75, 76, yeah. That was the era of streaking. I was the only one, I swear to God, never streaked. So we had a good long session of about 10 hours in the bar. And I said, okay, boys, let's go streaking. And they said, nah, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. And I said, called them all kinds of names and everything. So they decided, okay, we're going to do it. And so there was Mark Napier, who had already just signed with the Toros and
my
played with
teammate.
them. Yeah. Mike Kitchen. Okay.
Yeah.
Mike. Many years. And me. And Kitch had another year junior. I was the only draftable one. So we go streaking through the bar, and we're laughing our heads off. We're getting changed in the other restroom, and we get a knock on the door, and it's two plainclothes policemen. So they charge us with indecent exposure. Okay. So on the front page of the Toronto Star the next day is Boudreau, 3 Marlies caught for indecent exposure. The draft is in 5 days. All right. So I go in the third round after it's all there being charged and everything like this. Anyway, the charges went away. They just said it was a lark and they were goofing around, but the damage had been done. And the other thing too, it was a phone draft. There was 2 years the NHL had a phone draft because they were trying to hide it from the WHA and not let anybody know who was drafted. So I kept waiting and waiting. I'm saying the draft's starting at 1 o'clock. It's 2 o'clock. It's 3 o'clock. I'm not getting drafted. So when thinking I was being taken by the Leafs or Oakland, when the time came and they said, Bruce, you're drafted by Toronto in the third round, I went, oh my God. Like, I mean, one pick ahead of Mike O'Connell, as a matter of fact, who I'm sure you know very well. Yeah. And so I was sort of devastated at that point. And that's why, like, I was drafted the year before in the first round of the WHA. That's why my agent said, hey, let's go to the WHA for a year, learn your craft, then come back to the NHL. Everything got convoluted. I ended up coming back to Toronto, but I think Mr. Ballard had sort of taken a dislike for me at that point because I went to the WHA and things happened like they did. Yeah.
Well, I want to get into that in a bit, but just so you know, that year, and you talked, you might be going third or you might be going seventh. Ralph Klassen went third.
Yeah.
Not a name that really rings a bell right now with me. Mm-hmm. And then Greg Vedic went seventh. And another name that I don't think I've ever heard in the annals of the game of hockey. So certainly, that couldn't have helped you out the streaking evening for sure. So you do that 1 year in Minnesota, and then you end up coming to camp to the Leafs. And for the life of me, and I'm being totally honest about this, and from afar, I've admired you, and I say that because you're one of the first, like a true pro I played against when I was a young kid, breaking into the American Hockey League. I mean, this guy can play hockey. Like I don't know. I think you had 2 goals, 2 assists that night, but you were just always around the puck. You had the puck. I mean, man, this guy is good. And for the life of me, I never understood when I look at your stats, the years, Johnstown, Toronto, Dallas, Toronto, back to Dallas, up to Toronto, New Brunswick Hawks, that first year I played, where you had great night. You had 58 points in 49 games. Then you're up for the Leafs for 2 games. Then back to New Brunswick. Then back. What is going on there? Because you have the talent to play in the NHL, and you certainly, in my estimation, there had to be something else going on there. Someone didn't like you or something, because I don't see why you didn't just have a string of Torontos on your stat sheet.
Well, you know what? I appreciate the kind words, and I've gone back for 50 years almost now thinking the same thing. And I could never understand why I didn't stick. The one year I had 25 points in 23 games, and I never played the power play. And I remember asking Mike Nicolak, who our coach was. We got beat out of the playoffs, and I said, can I go back down to the minors and play there? I mean, because they're still playing. So I went down there, and it's funny because he came and watched us play. We were playing Maine Mariners, and I was still in New Brunswick at that time, or I'd been part of New Brunswick. And he came to me after a game, and he said, Bruce, good game, this, that, and the other thing. He says, now don't you worry. He says, next year, you're my number 2 center. I got 2 wingers. We're going to get you, everything's going to go well. And I said, great. I was so excited. Trained my ass off all summer long. Was ready to go. First day of training camp, they put me on defense for scrimmages. So I played defense with Mike Kazicki, who was another really good forward. And 4 days later, we got cut. So it was just, I don't know what it was, but I mean, that's the way it was. And my big thing is not to look, you look negative back at that time, but I'm thinking, okay, that's what made me a better coach, is knowing the ups and downs of individuals and being able to communicate with them in the worst of times and the best of times. So, I mean, I'm hoping, and I may be way off base, but I'm hoping that shitty experience was what made me become a coach and become, I think, a fairly successful one.
Are you ready to take your love for hockey to the next level? Join the Fight Club Raw Knuckles exclusive Patreon to unlock amazing perks like ad-free episodes, bonus interviews, and even a chance to win a game day experience with me in the Habs Cave. Don't miss out on this ultimate hockey experience. When I look at your career, a lot of success in what you did, and all the coaches you must have had. Because when I think back, and listen, we don't always agree with our coaches. We don't always like our coaches, but there has to be a respect there. And there were times in my career I felt like I was disrespected by coaches. And, I kind of stood up for myself, and it got me in trouble. When you look back over all those teams, I'm sure you learned something from each and every coach. I know I did through my Who was the one guy that got to Bruce Boudreau and really had an effect on him?
Well, you know what, I say this all the time when asked that question, that I think the person probably the most was Roger Nielsen. And the reason I say that, because nowadays we all talk about the 200-foot player, and you got to play 200-foot. Back in the 70s when I had him, and by the way, he hated me as a player, but because he coached Peterborough in junior, and I played for the Marlies, and we beat them in the Memorial Cup, or for the Memorial Cup. So I remember the first year that he coached, he wouldn't talk to me for the first 6 months. And because we had beaten them, and it would drive me nuts because I wanted the coach to like me, but he never did. But it came around. But he taught me how to play defense. He taught me how to think without the puck, and a lot of scorers, especially in junior, never learned that. And so, I mean, and the one thing about Roger is all the players always respected him because of his work ethic, but they always liked him because he communicated so well. And I mean, he would tell you to your face what he doesn't like, and he'd tell you to your face what he did like. And so, I mean, I tried to take as my personality and put Roger's brain into that type thing. And so I probably learned more from him than anybody else. But I mean, but like you said, like every coach, there's a good point or a good part of him that you like, whether it's his practice drills, whether it's his organization. He might be a real dink and you hate him, and we've all had those guys. I mean, but there's coaches that they all have something that you can take with you and add your personality, jiggle it all up together, and out comes the finished product. I mean, for example, I had Joe Crozier in the 70s, and he was like right out of the 50s, and he wouldn't let you do anything, but he was a motivator, and he was really good at it. You have Andy Murray, who I thought was fabulous when he went to the Kings. I learned so much when I got recalled back up as a coach type thing. So, I mean, I've just been blessed, I think, with a lot of good coaches that had very good points that I think that I was such a student of the game that I took their good points. But Roger, George Armstrong, Andy Murray, these guys all stuck with me, is stuck in my mind as the best guys that I've had.
Yeah, I played for Raj in New York, and I absolutely loved him. He was awesome. He threw some, for a guy who's all hockey, eats, breathes, sleeps it all the time. He had a personality, and he had a sense of humor that, when it came out, was it was pretty funny, and he was awesome for me. I loved playing for Raj. So that career. No, go ahead.
I was going to say a quick story about Roger. When his first year professional coaching was in Dallas, and I was there. And, back in 1976, it's pretty old school. Like, the guys would go out at night and come and practice and that. But Roger, when we first got there, he never drank or anything. I don't know if he ever had a bad habit.
Yeah,
and
I don't think so.
But we practiced at 9:00 every morning. And the guys sort of had a mutiny. If we're practicing at 9, you got to be at the rink at 7:30, and that means you got to get up at 7, or what have you. And but Roger's only thought was, if we practice early, I can go golfing in the afternoon. And the players, we said there's no way, because he couldn't understand why there wasn't a good practice, because the guys were out till 2 a.m. and getting maybe three hours sleep during the course of the day. So he changed that. But I mean, he had to learn too what the pro life was like, rather than the junior life. And it was a very interesting part up for him.
So that's funny. Funny stuff from Raj. So, 1991-92 was your last year playing the game. We retired the same year, my last season. And it's so funny. I always think back at this. I was drafted in the 17th round. Montreal, I could have came in 78, but I didn't. I stayed in school one more year, and the Habs were going for 4 in a row. I stayed in school. They won their 4th. So I wanted to come the next year thinking I'll be part of that first Stanley Cup. Their 5th, my first year. Anyway, we got bounced out by Minnie. Al McAdams scored Game 7 overtime. Boom, gone, my first year. Then my last year, 91-92, I retire. The Habs win the Cup the following year. And I always think back, if 1986 never happened for us as a team and had that opportunity to win the Stanley Cup, I would have been like, I think I would have been looking at the rest of my life and saying, why the hell didn't I leave school when I wanted to the first year?
Mm-hmm.
And then why didn't I really, suck it up and stick it out and have that one more year and then get a chance at a cup? But I'm so grateful I did. When you look back at your career there, and so every kid's goal who plays hockey, especially Canadian kid, is to win that Stanley Cup, and not achieving that goal. Was that difficult to you when you walked away from the game?
It's really difficult to this day. I still dream that I'm going to get one more chance and win it. I mean, I remember when I got hired in Minnesota, the owner phoned me on the way to the airport, and they were offering me a deal at that time. And they said, what are your thoughts on winning the Stanley Cup? And I told them, I said, I think about it every day. Every single day of my life, I think about winning the Stanley Cup. It's the first and foremost thing. And I said, and there's one other thing. I always think, what am I going to do when I get the cup, for your day? Those are the two things that used to drive me. They still drive me. I've just been at the All-Star game, and the cup was there. I still won't touch it. I mean, I still think, that dream will be in me until the day I die, I guess. But I mean, and you're right. Every Canadian kid that plays hockey or loves hockey, when they're in the driveway playing street hockey, all they're thinking about is scoring the goal to win the Stanley Cup. So haven't got it, but the same way as I was a player, Chris, when I was 38 years old and I was playing, I kept thinking of there was a guy in St. Louis that was a rookie, and his name escapes me right now. But I was saying, if he can be a rookie at the NHL at 38, then I've still got a chance. So I never let the dream die, and I never let anybody destroy that dream. Even now, I watch every game because I do a lot of analyst stuff, but still think that, I still could coach and should be coaching. And so you're always looking at what teams are losing, what teams may change their coach, and you start studying that team, and hopefully you get a call. And it hasn't happened yet, but the dream is still there.
Well, I certainly hope that happens for you, and I hope you get another shot at trying to win that big silver chalice. But I want to get back and talk about that retirement time. Like, man, it's so difficult. People don't understand. You play the game for so long, and all of a sudden, and me, I retired at 34. And I mean, there was this big empty hole right here in me when I retired. I'm not afraid to say it. I was lost. I don't care how much you prepare yourself for that moment, how much money you have in the bank. You can never be prepared enough to deal with that loss of what you love so much and what you've done all your life. And I struggled. There's no question about it. It's well documented, and I got lost in life, but I found my way back. So Fort Wayne, and you retired from the game. You went to Adirondack in the playoffs that year, played 4 games. When did you say I've had it? Like, this is it? Or were you, with me, I came back to Montreal, Bruce. Serge brought me back to be able to retire with the team I started with, which was kind of a curtain call. I did want to play one more year, but they ended up not signing me. So I said, that's it for me. I'm walking away. Were you forced out, or did you kind of have to just walk away? You had enough?
No, I got lucky, quite frankly. I mean, I was playing, like I said, at 38, had a good year, like in Fort Wayne. I mean, I think I had 85 points or something, and was signed for another year. And then I went to the draft, and it was in Quebec City. And Larry Gordon, who was coaching of Muskegon at Cleveland at the time, where he was the general manager of Cleveland, came up to me and he said, hey, do you want to coach? And I said, eventually, yeah, but I'm playing right now. And he says, well, listen, I'll offer you a 3-year deal to coach Muskegon in the Colonial Hockey League. And my big thing then was, once you get over a certain age and you're a minor league player, you're classified as a minor league player, you only get 1-year deals. So I'd had a 1-year deal for like 9 years. And the first time I didn't have success as a player, I knew I wasn't going to get it. Then it wouldn't be up to me. So he offered me a 3-year deal to coach right then. So I said, 3 years, that's the longest I've ever had a contract for. So I took it. So I went right from playing to coaching. So there was no downtime for me. I mean, so I got really lucky because I still did the same stuff in the summer. The only difference was now I had to spend time recruiting, and when you're still playing, it's not as hard to recruit because all the players you're trying to recruit, you either played with or you know. It's not like you're 20 years older them and they don't know who you are or what they're getting into or believe you when you're talking to them or not. So I was lucky enough. Like, I thought I was going to play till I was 50, and I had planned to if something hadn't come up. But this came up, and it was a 3-year deal. So I said, even if it was the Colonial League, which would be below the American League, below the International League, it was more like what the East Coast League is right now. I said, I'm jumping at it, and I'm going to take it. And I got a raise to $32 or $32,000 from my 29 that I was making in Fort Wayne, and I thought that was great. I thought I was rich.
So, now like so many guys, right? They get out of hockey, they want to stay in the game, and everybody can't. I get that. And I remember sitting on the bench times during my career thinking, could I be a good coach? Could I not? Should I maybe try and get into that when I retire? Did you have thoughts of that as a player, or did it just come out of an offer, that 3-year offer?
No, I was the player assistant coach for about 7 years. Coming into that in Fort Wayne, in St. Catharines, I was always I think from my last 12 years playing, I was either the captain or the assistant player coach, and so I knew that was eventually going to be my path. So when it got offered it to me, the first offer I jumped at. Because of the reasons I mentioned to you. Yeah. But I mean, you spend all your time, say in the previous 8 or 9 years thinking how you would do things as a coach. You've taken everything in from everybody you've talked to and everything else. I went to all kinds of coaching clinics and everything as a player to try to prepare myself to be a coach. So, I mean, I was ready for the task. I just missed playing, as I do now. You miss coming off the ice sweating, and you miss, like going out. Like I remember in my last few years when I was 38 in Fort Wayne, I'd sit between two rookies and just sit there and say, okay, what'd you just do last night? Come on, I need some stories to keep me going here. You need the stories, right? And so, I mean, that's what I did. That's what I missed when I went from coaching to playing, because the first thing I realized is you can't hang out with the players when you're the coach, or you lose a little bit of the respect the next day.
Yeah, no question about it. It's funny. So the coaching game, and you're committed. And listen, I did everything when I retired. I mean, I sold insurance. I hated it. I sold boats. I what the hell else did I do? Oh, I was part of a startup company, kind of like a cameo thing, but ahead of its time. And I just, God, I had that hole in me. You never find that passion. You'll never find anything that compares to what you did as a player. You just won't. You won't.
No.
And the closest thing, I guess, is staying in the game and being around the game because you're so familiar with everything and your love for the game. So I got an opportunity by Lemaire Jacques, who was a tremendous coach for me. I love him. I respect him. And he gave me an opportunity in Jersey year after they won the Cup. And I'm not afraid to say it. I thought I could do it, but the players felt like they had two head coaches. I'm not an assistant coach. I couldn't be. And it cost me the job after 1 year. I had a lot of resistance from players on that team. A couple of guys, which I had fights with, and they didn't care for me. And they made it difficult, and I don't blame them. I blame myself because I really wasn't cut out to be an assistant coach. And I left. I went to the East Coast Hockey League expansion team. I coached 2 years there, Bruce. My first year, I got coach of the year. I loved it. I loved communicating with my players, trying to get when I first got there, I had a difficult time, right? We were like, started off like 4-12-2. And I'm like, am I this stupid? Yeah. Like, are they not understanding what I'm saying? Well, eventually we went on this crazy winning streak. Things turned around. I did really well. And it felt great that I was getting through to these guys. They would understand it. And I loved it. So I lasted 2 years there. Almost got the job in Providence. Listen to how this, right? You know how this goes. But I talked to Michael Collins the night before they're going to name the coach. Pat Burns was really pushing for me to get the job in Providence. And Michael Collins called me. We're going to name you tomorrow. I'm waiting. Big day. My big day. I'm excited. I'm going to go to Providence coach. And he called me the next day. He said, sorry, Chris, we had to go in another direction. I said, really? And he said, yeah, we named Peter Laviolette. And I'll tell you the reason it was the owner of the Providence Bruins was really close with Peter, and Peter played there for 4 years, and Ed Anderson wanted Peter as a head coach of Providence. So I said, I get it. Politics were working for me too. If I got that job by Pat pushing for me, then, and Peter got snubbed out, it would have worked the other way. And look at the career he's had. I had the opportunity to go back, and this is where I really admire your stick-to-itiveness, because my team moved from Maryland to Jackson, Mississippi, and I said, And, I didn't go to Jackson, Mississippi. And my coaching career ended there. And that's why when I see guys like you who have paid the price, like no one's paid the price, how many years were you, in the minor leagues from East Coast
33.
League? 33. But as a coach.
30.
As a coach.
Oh, as a coach, I'd have to. Where did I start?
About 12. About 12.
Yeah.
East
14,
Coast League. 14 years, right? In the minor leagues, picking up, going here, picking up, going there. Come on, the family, let's go. Like it's admirable. And you did what you did, and you finally get that break. And I'll never forget when you got named, because you got named by a guy I admire in George McPhee. And that's your first NHL job in Washington.
Love it.
After all that time in the minor leagues, and you finally get named as an NHL head coach that first time, like, how happy are you?
Oh, it's so crazy. I mean, I was 53 years old, and when I first got the job, and I remember because I got phoned at 6:30 in the morning, and George phoned me, and me, my wife, and my young son, we were jumping on the bed like kids jump on the bed, and we all had our hands, and we were like crazy overjoyed, and George had told me, he says, you got to be here at the rink. We got an 11 o'clock practice. Well, Hershey's two hours plus from there. I got lost. I forgot how to go to Washington. My mind was in such a tizzy. I finally get there, and I see Brooks Lake. First of all, he says, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I don't know. I don't know. I'm told to come here." And so, and then I had to address the players. We had one practice, and then we had to play. So it was a whirlwind, but it was fabulous. I'll never forget walking around the dressing room for the first time, my first meeting with the players. And when I have a meeting, I never stand in one place. I always walk around so I can stare at different guys. So I'm staring and I'm staring and I'm staring, and I look up and I go, "Holy F, that's Alex Ovechkin." I said, "What am I doing coaching Alex Ovechkin?" So, that's when it just sort of dawned me, I'm in the NHL right now. What am I supposed to do? So we went out there, had a practice, got very fortunate and won our first few games. And George decided to stick with me a little longer. And we ended up coming from last place to first place at the end of the year.
Yeah, it's incredible, the numbers you put up. And again, right now, to have the numbers you have in a .626 winning percentage for someone over 1,000 games, it's incredible what you've achieved as a coach, and it's so cool to see that. And you certainly shouldn't be here doing this with me right now, but I appreciate it. And so that Washington time, God, seasons, right? The first year, incredible numbers. Next year, 50 wins, 108 points. The following season, 54 wins, 121 points. And then the next year, 48 wins, like 107 points. First in the Southeast. Lost semifinals, quarterfinals, semifinals, the conference. Now, going in to Wash, when you went in there, and like you said, Ovechkin, man, now, it's different in a way coaching minor leaguers, I think, because guys are really trying to get up there. They're striving to get up. I want to get to that next level. But now you're at this level with guys that are there, guys that are big stars. Was it intimidating at all? And like you said, yeah, geez, Alex Ovechkin. How did you get over that intimidation part of it? And listen, I'm the coach here. I know he's a big star, but I got a job to do.
Well, I think the easiest thing for me, Chris, is with Hershey, 2 years before we had won the Calder Cup. And next year we went to the finals and lost. But 7 of those players in the 2 years were already on Washington.
Okay.
So it made it so much easier. Like, I knew these guys believed in me from the start because we did nothing but win. Like, I had the Mike Greens and the Fleischmans and the Lakes and the Steckles and the Gordons and the Erskines. All of them had played for me. So even though I was intimidated by Alex at that point, I had all those other guys being able to feed me, telling me I'm doing the right thing. This is great. We're getting back to doing this. And they enjoyed winning in Hershey. So it became really easy. And I'm sure when I wasn't there that the players that didn't know me were asking the players that knew me what I was like, what's it going to be like, how's this? And they all said positive things. That probably helped get it over the hump a little bit quicker than it would normally.
So that time in Wash, obviously big numbers as a coach, and you get into that final season there. You're going into your 6th season, I believe. 22 games in, 12-9-1, 25 points. And it's the first time now as an NHL coach you're going to get let go. I hate the word fired, but you're going to get let go. Why'd that happen? Did guys get, because we know, and there's a tenure for coaches. There's a time for coaches. Players sometimes stop listening to the message. What happened there with you, your first?
Well, we were still in first place. We were first place in the Southeast when it happened, but we started off 7-0 that year. And so we went on a 5-9-2 run for 16 games, and a little bit almost like what Edmonton would have done this year. Or in the past. I mean, start off good, but I think this was destined to happen. And it wasn't George that really fired me. It was Ted Leonsis. They wanted, after the last year that we lost to Tampa in the second round, even though we had won 4 division titles and the President's Trophy and a conference and that, we weren't having playoff success. So he was George saved my job, I'm sure, during the course of the summer, but they were waiting for a blip, and the first blip that was going to happen, the plug was going to get pulled on me, and that's basically what happened. I mean, I could see it happening over the course of the summer, the way things were working out, and I mean, I guarantee that they were so ticked off. I mean, not they. I mean, the ownership in Washington, when we started off 7-0, they're going, oh no, here we go again. They're going to win it again. How can we let them go at this stage? But once we went into a little bit of a tailspin, and I don't think none of the players gave up on me. I mean, every one of them came to my house that day and hugged and did all your goodbyes and everything. So, I mean, I think that they were happy. It's just that things weren't working out well. We were losing close games. We were losing games maybe that we should have won. But, that was the tenure. I was lucky enough. And what had happened, this way things work out. Just a quick story here. The week before I got fired, okay, we're playing Anaheim, who was on a long road trip, and they were losing all on their road trip. And we were losing 4-1 going into the third period. And we came up and we went 4-2, and then they made it 5-2. Then we made it 5-3, 5-4. And then we're pulling the goalie. And Alex looks at me and he says, "Where do you want me, coach?" And I said, "On the bench. You're -4. You're horrible." So he started saying something in Russian and everything else. So it's the first time I ever sat him out a shift in 4.5 years.
God forbid.
We ended up we scored a goal. We scored a goal, tied it up. I put him back on the ice, and he got an assist. We won the game in overtime. And the only question that was being asked of me is, what were you and Alex yelling at each other? You two having problems? And I'm going, no, it was the heat of the game. So a week later, I got fired, okay? And I got hired the next day by Anaheim because they thought, oh, this guy's really tough he doesn't take any crap from the best players. And just so happened we were playing them. They were going to fire their coach, and that's how it worked out. So, I mean, I was going to get let go, but if I'm going to get let go, surely glad that I was able to work 2 days later.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. The fastest the guy's been hired. But, from afar, and I saw that whole thing, and I had moved back here to Montreal. At that time, I took a job in the radio, English radio here on TSN. I had my own radio show every day and had fun doing it. And I finally got settled in and turned my life around. And when you got let go, of course, everybody's going to talk, and they talked about that. And that's, from afar, it looks like, oh my God, Alex Ovechkin is a coach killer. He got the good guy. Everybody loves Bruce. Everybody loves Gabby. And this mean Russian got out the hammer and sickle and did it to the coach. And that couldn't have been further from the truth, right?
Absolutely. Like, I remember the next morning, Monday morning, because this was a Sunday game, the first thing I did was call Alex into my office. And I said, "Alex, are we okay?" And he said, "Yeah, coach, I was just mad. Like, I played bad. I was mad at myself." And I said, "Okay, I just want you to know it was a thing that I didn't like doing, but I knew you well enough that you weren't having a great game, and we were on the verge of coming back, and I didn't want to make you go on the ice for an empty net goal to put you -5 for the night." So, and he said, "Okay, no problem. That's great." And we left it at that, and that's the last we ever talked about it, except for the media. would bring it up everywhere you go, every chance you get. And so it was an unfortunate thing, but I think to this day, my last coaching experience against Alex, in the warm-up, he went by and he did the heart sign right to me and pointed to me. So you knew we were, like it almost made you cry watching warm-up on the bench, but it knew we were still pretty tight.
Bruce, I gotta say it. I love that about you. That almost made you cry. No, like you cry inside. You feel it, and you show it. You're not afraid to show your emotions as a man, and that's something as men that from the time we're little kids we're told not to do. Right? We fall down, hurt ourselves. Toughen up, don't cry. And I love that about you. I do. I really do. And we're going to get to that too a little bit later, but get closer to the action in the Fight Club with the Raw Knuckles podcast over on Patreon. Whether you're an instigator, enforcer, or aiming for the Hall of Fame, there's something for everyone waiting for you. Don't miss your chance to be part of the ultimate hockey community. The Vancouver thing, again, here you are. You come in, you get a great start there, right? Another 7-0 stretch when you take over. Everything's going great. Missed the playoffs, come 5th in the Pacific. And then the next year gets going, and man, you got thrown under the bus. That's all I'm going to say. And I can't imagine how that felt. But I also can't imagine. No, I can imagine how it felt when everybody's giving the Bruce There It Is chant, and that fan base embraced you like they did. It's incredible. It's incredible.
I can only say that, I don't think I've been around sports. I follow sports all my life, and I've never seen anything like it, quite frankly. And I'm not saying that in a bravado type of thing.
No.
What was happening was crazy. Like when they started the Bruce There It Is at the beginning, I didn't want it. The press would ask me about it because as a coach, you don't want to usurp the players. It's the players' game, right? And by the end, when everybody knew I was going to get let go, every time they started, the players would talk, would turn to me on the bench and say, "Come on, louder, louder." The players would be saying they wanted it louder. And I thought that was so freaking. I'd say, shut up, boys. But it was nuts. But it was, if you ever have to get fired, as a coach or let go, and you hate to be let go, but in very few coaches in any sport get let go and still have an opportunity to address the players as a group and say, this is our last. Thank you, and thank them. So that last game, I knew I hadn't been fired or hadn't been let go, but I knew I was this was going to be my last game. We had it marked down on the calendar for 3 months now that this was going to be the last game. So, I got to address the players, and I'd never seen anything like it where all the players and the coaching staff were all sitting in there crying. And players are coming up and hugging me and everything else. If you have to get let go, I guess that's a good thing. I had a party at my house that night that I'd called for because I knew I was getting let go. So I had all the office people over and everything else. And we're all sitting up there crying at 1 o'clock in the morning. I still hadn't got the call that I was fired. So I kept asking the team services guy, I said, "What's going on?" And then we got the call at around 12:30 or something like that. And it said, "Meet in my office at 9 o'clock. And we all went, "There it is." We knew that was the moment coming. So, so it was no surprise when I sat down there and they told me, and I said, yeah, and then I was asked by one of them, "Did we treat you all right?" And I just looked at them and didn't say anything.
I just, it was so sad watching you stand there on the bench at the end and looking up, and the crowd really, saluting you and appreciating you. And that had to be, as you stood there, just such a great feeling inside you, even though, this is, you're getting let go. And it's terrible the way you were treated but boy, those fans must have made it a whole lot easier, and those players, because I watched the interviews, I heard what they said, I just impressed the shit out of me. So it's a testament to who you are as a person, as a coach, the way you communicate and the way players they embrace you, and that's awesome. So I'm happy for you for that. There's no question about it. And I hope that you land back behind a bench at some point here, and you can continue that dream of reaching the Stanley Cup Finals and being able to touch that thing one day. So, God, so many things I wanted to ask you. And can I just quickly ask you about your time in Johnstown and that whole Slapshot event? Like, that had to be like incredible. Like Paul Newman coming to town. Didn't they use your apartment or something?
Yeah. It was pretty crazy. Like, I mean, again, you have regrets and you don't have regrets. So in Minnesota, in the WHA folded, I was the first player drafted in the dispersal draft to Indianapolis. And but Minnesota owed me $10,000 as signing bonus. My agent said, "Are you going to pay the signing bonus?" And they said, "No." Well, they said, "Well, then he's not coming because he's going to sign with the Leafs next summer." And then they said, Bill Waters was my agent, and he said, "Well, just go to Johnstown where you were. You started the season. Play out they're doing that movie, do the movie," and nobody thought anything of it. So we went, and like 48 years later, that movie's probably the question I'm asked about more than any other question going. I mean, it was a great experience. When I got let go in Vancouver, I had two of the actors who I hadn't seen in 45 years text me, and like I'm going, are you kidding me? Like, I mean, these guys are texting me after all of this time. And it was such a fun movie to make. I mean, at the time, and we would practice in the morning, and then the movie would be made. We'd have to be in our skates for 8-10 hours a day.
Did you interact with Newman at all? Like, was he pretty cool with you guys and stuff?
He was really cool. He was cool. He made good friends with some of the guys on the team. With me, there was two interactions. One, he asked me to show him how to take a slap shot one day. So I'm sitting there and I'm trying to be so technical. Like I'm trying to he says, "Okay, he says, that's enough, kid. That's enough, kid." And the other one, my roommate was Dave Hansen. I'm sure you remember him. He had said, he said, "Listen, Bruce, you want to go see the dailies, which are the shots that are shown that day, and because it's just going to be me and you, George Roy Hill, and Paul Newman." And I said, "Friggin' of course." Yeah. So I went there, and the four of us are in the room watching the clips, and Paul Newman turns around to me and he says, "Bruce," he says, "I just made a movie called Judge Roy Bean, and I just did it for the money." He says, "This movie, this is going to be a great movie. This is going to be fun, fun, fun." And I remember him saying that to me, and like him talking actually to me. And and I remember leaving going, that was Paul Newman talking to me. Like, this is crazy, So that's what I miss or remember a lot about the movie, because they did it 2 weeks while I was in Johnstown, while we were still playing. And then in the summer, we had to come back to Syracuse and do another week in Syracuse. And the Syracuse one was when they threw the tire thing and hit Jeff Carlson in the face, and they went into the crowd and started fighting. Yeah. So that was the scene that we did there. And almost had a speaking part, but because they said they're going to look at me and say, "Do you want to go in and help?" And I was supposed to say, "No." That was my speaking part. But the other guy I was talking to had a big beard. He looked a lot tougher than me. So, they asked him instead.
Well, it turned out to be certainly a cult favorite all these years later. It's incredible. Back quickly to the coaching. When you talked about the fan base and not wanting to upstage the players and stuff, I get that. And I can't help but want to bring this up about Lindy Ruff, like in New Jersey. I'm sure you saw it, right?
Yeah.
Fire Lindy, fire. Then at the end of the season, after he brings that team to where, the regular season, they started saying, sorry, Lindy. And it kind of reminded me of how the fan base was with you, and it's incredible how hockey fans can be, right? And
they're fickle. They're fickle.
They are. There's no question.
If your team's winning, they love you. Yeah. And I understand it because, we're fans. And I was really happy for Lindy. And actually, I thought they had a good chance of winning the cup. And I think they're going to put on a push right now and still potentially make the playoffs if they get Jack Hughes back and a couple more guys back. But hopefully it works out for them.
They got to get healthy. I played with Lindy in New York. Awesome guy. And before I let you go, last week I had a guy on here, Doug Shedden.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Sheds is over in Europe. And there's another guy who has stuck with the coaching game. And he was so good, so funny like yourself. What stories he had from the coach, his years coaching. And a wonderful guy. I played against him, but I never met him, and to interact with him like we did on the party, it was awesome. It was really cool.
One quick story about Doug is he was still wanting to play, so he phoned me up when I was coaching my first year and said, "Can I play for you?" And I said, "Sheds, come on, yeah, for sure." And so I had him living with me. I was the coach. He was the player. Because apartments were hard to come by back then. And halfway through the year, he got his first coaching job in Wichita. And, he thanked me for living with him and everything else. Then as soon as he got to Wichita, he tried to steal 8 of my players. And I went, okay, now we know. Yeah. And so when I went to Mississippi, he was in Louisiana, and he had the toughest team, in the league. So I had to get the toughest team in the league, and we had some incredible fights. But it was always one of those that I respected Doug and liked him off the ice because I would be drinking with him every now and again in the summer. But on the ice, we fought hard, and our teams really didn't like each other. But he has won championships everywhere he's gone. He's a really sharp guy. I'm really surprised that he didn't get a coaching opportunity in North America.
Yeah, me too. We talked about that, that's for sure. Listen, Bruce, one of the great gentlemen of the game. I've followed you from afar. From that first day I saw you play hockey, I was so happy for you when you got that job in Washington for the first time in the NHL. And then certainly I was happy for you in Vancouver when you got treated so well by the fan base there. And the players when you were leaving that organization. And you're in the media now. I hope you get back behind a bench, an NHL bench soon, and you deserve it. And I hope one day you get to lift that Stanley Cup over your head. You're certainly one of the great guys and good characters in this game, this great game of hockey that we all love so much. So I really appreciate you joining me, Bruce, and wishing you the best.
I appreciate it, Chris. Appreciate you having me on. And believe me, I remember those 49 games you played in Nova Scotia because we probably played you 15 times up to then because we were the only 2 teams down there. And I hated to see, was Bert Templeton the coach for you? Bert was. And, he's a tough boy himself.
I'm telling you. Hey, we
could talk for hours.
I got the lowdown from Tim Burke when I went. I was naive, like I said. I got there. I remember Burke came in. He, read the riot act, no smoking in the room, this and that. And I don't know pro hockey. I go out on the ice, I'm skating around, and there's Maurice Barrette, French kid, goaltender. I smell smoke. I'm like, what's that smell? And he's skating around on the ice, smoking a cigarette. I go, what are you doing? He goes, the coach said no smoking in the locker room, not on the ice. And I'm like, this is pro hockey? And then Bert, of course, Bert really, he helped me out those first few years. He loved that. He didn't like college kids. But when he saw this college kid fighting the way he was fighting, man, that changed pretty quickly. He was awesome with me. I love Bruce.